Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week, Arsenal had two home matches in the first quarterfinal leg of the Champions League hosting Real Madrid, and then this past Saturday in the Premier League against Brentford. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove. I'm sure you're buzzing this week for the same reason I am, which of course is the release of the new trailer for Andor, which second season starts in like 10 days. So who's excited for that? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm kidding. It's 3-0 against Real. I mean, I'm excited for Andor, but also, come on. You know what the show's really going to be about today.
You know I don't watch trailers anyways.
I know, but like...
Yeah, no, that definitely had me buzzing for days after. I would talk to anybody I could about it, especially those who don't even follow soccer at all. And it was it was just one of those things.
It is one of those things that as you sort of silo yourself into this particular world, the moment you talk to someone who isn't there, like, you realize how much you have to explain to like help them understand why this is a big deal. Like, there's so much background you have to go in there.
I got into a pretty brief spiel to explain the context, but yeah, it's there.
Yeah, it's but we don't have to go into that because we know it all, and oh, it's so glorious.
Yeah. So before we get there, just a few other things to talk about. For one thing, we were talking about Friday Night Lights a little bit last week, and you mentioned Taylor Kitsch, and I knew the name sounded familiar, and I didn't know where I knew him from, and I was a little bit amused that I think the one thing that I've definitely seen him in was he played Gambit in X-Men Origins Wolverine, which, you know, by far one of the more forgettable and not good X-Men movies, but... There he is.
Yeah, I'm about to say he was. I recall he also drops in. Is it him who makes an appearance or someone else in? Was it Deadpool and Wolverine? Because the whole point is they're drawing like people from like characters from all over. Was he? Or was it somebody pretending to be?
They had. No, I don't. Not that I remember. Maybe. I mean, they had Channing Tatum playing Gambit.
Oh, that was who it was.
Yeah.
Not that they look the same, but I just
that was a different incarnation of the character than we'd ever seen on screen before. So
yes, but yeah. Ryan Reynolds was Deadpool in both of them, but
yeah. Oh God.
Very different versions of the character.
Yes. So we've talked in the past about a proposed schedule format change for MLS. There was a development on that, I guess?
Sort of. It's kind of the biggest news coming out of MLS recently, which to say is not actually all that much. But apparently the story came out. I guess there was a vote on this or a conversation on the schedule change. And the short answer is, I mean, the rumor floating around, we should just sort of set up the story here, was that with MLS taking a break due to the World Cup in the U.S. next summer, that they would use that as an opportunity to, instead of just taking a break in the season and picking up afterwards, that they would use that as an opportunity to start a brand new season in, I don't know, August of 2026 and begin a 26-27, a fall, winter, spring calendar, along the lines of the traditional European calendar, as opposed to the American spring, summer, fall calendar, which is what MLS has used since it began 30 years ago. The short answer is that was always the sense, I should say. That was sort of the prediction that the World Cup would be the opportunity for that. And apparently, as a result of this vote, that is, if there is a switch coming, it will definitely not happen until 2027. They've begun to explore that, which is the statement they made this week. They're going to look into it, which is a pretty good sign. I think that they overall would like to do it. I think let's put it this way, there's way too much smoke for there to not be fire in terms of actually making this switch, as opposed to a thing that's generally being talked about and might possibly happen. Oh, we might have promotion, relegation, one of those kind of comprehensive overviews. I think this is a thing that they would like to do. I think it's making sure that all their ducks are in a row and they understand all the implications of what they're doing, and they get enough of the clubs on board to actually go through with it, because I'm sure there's a handful of clubs the cold weather ones, the northern teams that are going to be very resistant to this, possibly, as well as a few in some of the intricacies of how the schedule would set up and things like that. So, yeah, the short answer is whatever happens, it's not going to happen. If anything happens, it won't happen until 2027 at the earliest.
Right. So they're missing the kind of. It would make sense to do it after World Cup because things are going to be kind of thrown into disarray anyways. But yeah, I guess that's not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea was, and again, I don't know how much of this was like idle speculation from fans and how much of this was like actual information coming up. But the idea would be you would finish this season, 2025. You would have some sort of like short tournament in the spring of 2026. Finish, well, in the, I guess maybe in April, even in May, before the World Cup, have the World Cup. And then in August, you would pick up the for real 2026-27 season. That was the prediction. Right. And with the fact you're taking the time off for the World Cup, which they have to, because so much of the U.S. infrastructure is going to be tied into that. It's one thing when it was in Qatar, it didn't matter because the season was over. But thinking perhaps in 2018 when it was in Russia during the summer, I think they took a few weeks off during the group stage because if you're an MLS player in the World Cup, that was when most of them were going to be. And let's be honest, once we hit the knockout stages, the number of MLS players goes down substantially. And I think they picked up playing during the knockout stages. And I don't think you could, for infrastructure reasons alone, I don't know that you could do that with the World Cup in the United States. So that was the prediction. I guess it means the 2026 calendar is going to look super weird, and we're probably going to play a lot of winter games anyway. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of handle that. But it's a weird thing to talk about. We're like 2 months into the 25 season, so yeah, there's a lot of like that long term planning going on.
Last week, we mentioned De Bruyne's announced departure from Manchester City, and I hear before we leave MLS that there is a rumor as to which club he might be likely to join, perhaps?
Well, so welcome to MLS roster rules. So the rumor going around, because none of this is really officially confirmed by the league, is that for a number of international players, they're rather than have the clubs bid against one another, which would drive up prices. And since remember, it's a single entity league, so every contract is owned by the league, not by the individual clubs. Rather than have clubs bidding against each other, the teams possess what are called discovery rights. Now, theoretically, these are designed for young talent. You're discovering young, talented players and sort of grabbing them before their international price skyrockets. But the rumor is that Kevin De Bruyne's name was on the discovery rights list for, of all clubs, Inter Miami, which means Miami effectively, as I understand it, would get first crack at signing him. Now, they could theoretically refuse, which would be a choice. Although, I mean, depending on their roster setup and their salary positions and all of that, maybe it would actually make sense for them to pass. But again, MLS won't confirm that. We wouldn't know that unless like he actually did sign with someone in MLS, and then either Miami said we're glad to exercise our discovery rights on this, or perhaps or perhaps he signs with someone else and Miami says, oh yeah, we didn't want him. Which you probably wouldn't hear anyway. I think most clubs want to keep that information close to the vest because those lists are secret from each other as well. Anyway, the long story short is it appears perhaps if De Bruyne were to come to MLS, Miami would be would be a very likely landing spot, which isn't super surprising, all things considered. But that assumes he wants to come to the U.S. I mean, whatever he's going to get paid in the U.S., he's probably going to could be paid substantially more in Saudi Arabia. Maybe he'd rather go back to Belgium. I don't know his history in terms of like the Belgian club he perhaps originally played for, but if he did, I don't know. But I suppose if he does come to the U.S., Miami's on the list. It's got to be on the list if that's a direction both the club and player want to go in. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's we'll see. We'll keep everyone updated as we find out more. I mean, I'd be happy with him at Miami. I mean, two of my favorite players on the same team would be pretty cool. So, favorite non-Arsenal players, I should say. But yeah, that'd be something. Well, clearly the thing that we should talk about this week that we're excited to talk about is the Real Madrid match. So this was a Tuesday match. It was quite a thing. So we ended the first half scoreless. Not entirely, I think, to me at least, unexpected in a match like this necessarily. You know, we had some chances, but you know, didn't end up getting anywhere. And then the second half happened.
Well, I think it's fair to say Declan Rice happened. But I have to say, first off, I mean, let's just sort of start at the very beginning there. I mean, we were clearly amped for this, or I certainly was when we sat in front of the camera a week ago, and here we are afterwards. I mean, as we talked about, this is the kind of game that you make the Champions League for, right? This is from Arsenal's perspective in particular. To have that moment, we talked about it, like we talked about a year ago with Bayern, right? The opportunity to go toe to toe with a club like this, and then to get the result we got is just freaking fantastic, right? I mean, we'll get into the second leg stuff, and it's really halftime, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just bask in this one for a moment. How awesome was that, right?
Well, and it was funny for me too. So, as someone who is really laser focused on Arsenal and occasionally Miami, I don't really know too much about where other players are playing or anything. So, I'm like seeing the little bit of pregame coverage, and I'm like, wait a second, is that Kylian Mbappe? He's playing for Real Madrid now? And then a couple of minutes later, I was like, oh, and Modric. I remember him playing for Croatia in the World Cup a couple of years ago. And then, and Jude Bellingham. Like all these names, like there's at least 3 high-profile players who I knew largely from the international game, who I'm seeing now all in the same team that we're playing against. Like, wow, okay, that like increased the stakes beyond Real Madrid's reputation going into it. The particular roster we were set to play against, I was like, oh, shoot.
I mean, and this is what gets into sort of part of what makes Real Madrid. Like when you say Real, like there's something to that. I mean, they are, as we mentioned, they've won the Champions League 15 times, by far the most successful club in the competition. They've always been one of the premier teams on the continent. Basically, I mean, really, so the Champions League began in the 50s, and they won the first 5. And it's been they've just kind of taken off from there. Starting in the early 2000s was the famous era of the Galacticos, the Stars. I mean, this was when they acquired David Beckham, sort of the peak of his stardom, but also Zinedine Zidane, Raul. I think, did Figo play for them? I mean, they were just collecting the best players, like the biggest names from all over. You know, a lot of them Spanish, but French. They could get Germans. They could get Englishmen at a time when Englishmen didn't play in Spain. And they've sort of continued it. I mean, Kylian Mbappe joined them in this past offseason. His contract ran down at Paris, and he joined Real, which was kind of a thing that seemed just likely to happen in general. They've been linked, by the way, in a similar fashion. They've been linked to Liverpool's Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it seems plausible that he will, after his contract expires with Liverpool, he will join them in the offseason. Just by the way, they get Mbappe after winning the Champions League last year. Their key player in that was a young Spaniard, Vinny Jr., Vinicius. You saw him on the wing.
Right.
Yeah, Luka Modric has been there for years. He is one of the old hands at Real. Jude Bellingham, I think, joined last year, was his first year after a season or two at Dortmund in Germany. And then, you know, again, we didn't even throw in, by the way, their manager, Carlo Ancelotti, is the only manager to win all 5 of the big 5 European leagues.
Wow.
He won a title at Chelsea in England. He's also won in Italy, in Spain. He won with Real. He's won in Spain, and obviously France and Germany. Was he the manager when they did? No, I don't think he won the treble with Bayern. That might have been a German, but yeah, I mean, as successful a manager as there is in the game. I mean, that's who Real Madrid is. You have heard of them, even if you haven't heard of them. You've heard of them. They are like they're Yankees, Dallas Cowboys kind of famous,
right?
much more so in the non-English speaking world. Like you get into South America and like Real Madrid and Barcelona is a big name too, but like Real Madrid is, especially if you're Spanish speaking, is everywhere. That's just who they are. So yeah, when we talk about being overwhelmed by the opposition, that's kind of what we're talking about, at least in terms of the team sheet. They don't get any big. I should say they don't get any bigger in terms of the club and its reputation. There are better teams out there currently, but that's, oh boy, right? And you saw that just looking down that lineup. It's very easy to look at that lineup card and just go, oh boy.
Yeah.
But then again,
that was how we went in. But
well, but let's be fair. That's what a lot of people do when they look down our lineup card and go, man, what do we do about this? So,
yeah, good point. So yeah, I mean, like we said, both sides had some chances that didn't go anywhere in the first half. There were definitely, we'll talk about him a little bit more in a little bit, but some good saves by Courtois and by Raya. There was, I think Raya's may have come later in the match, but yeah, so then they come back from halftime, and within 15 minutes or so, we get our first free kick from scoring range, from striking range, and we have Declan Rice take it, which is an interesting choice, right? Like we hadn't really seen him do that much before, at least not taking a direct free kick. Like maybe he may have once or twice in a way that he takes it short or, plays it as a cross or something like that. But we haven't really seen him go for goal from a free kick before.
I feel like we don't see a lot of Arsenal players go for goal. It does seem like our go-to move on those is crosses. Now that may just be, I'm thinking of all the ones we have in the position we're in. I don't recall getting a lot in the kind of position Rice was in for that first one. Very central, a little further out than you might have expected for having a go at the net. But we also know, our typical free kick taker, right, is Odegaard, who's more of a passer than a shooter, like who's going to be looking to drop, throw a cross in over the line, and you think about the players we have going forward to sort of convert set pieces, and so it makes a lot of sense. This has been a kind of conversation over the last couple of weeks coming into this, that Arsenal generally don't score direct free kick goals, and turns out apparently. I haven't confirmed this, but apparently we hadn't had one since September of 2021, which just, that feels a little far, but at the same time, like I don't remember any.
Right. Me neither, which that coincides with like before I started watching September 21. So that would mean that this is the first that I've seen them score.
I can think of off the top of my head a handful of like screamers from distance, but those are in the run of play. Like those, like I'm thinking of like Thomas Partey against Spurs, right? Those are games where like where the ball is being passed around the box and someone leathers it from distance, as opposed to standing over the free kick. Now, having said that, there was a lot of conversation after the game that apparently the instructions from the set piece coach were to run a play, lob it into the line, have somebody run onto it and try to head it in. And Rice, with a little bit of encouragement, it sounds like from Saka, basically said, you know what, I'm going to have a go. Apparently Saka said something to the effect of like, hey, if you're feeling it, man, go for it. And,
I had read something. I guess Odegaard had a letter to fans like today talking about that and how that's what he had directly spoken with him about moments before taking the kick. And that's what he was planning for. And I guess I haven't rewatched the replay of that today after reading that. But Odegaard said that's why you could see him like running forward, like ready to interact with, the cross that he made once it got over the wall or whatever. But no, he saw something and he went for it.
Yeah. And I mean, you could, and I know Thierry Henry post game had some criticism of Courtois' positioning and the way he positioned the wall and all of that. But I mean, we have to be honest. I mean, the money shot, of course, is the one directly behind Rice where you can see the bend in the ball around the wall. I mean, That's bonkers, right?
Yeah, it was really. It was like, what, a yard that it went off to the side or something? It was.
I mean, that, and I mean, when and I know I shared with you after the game the picture floating around, the bend it like Declan. But that's exactly what we're talking about. Like that's what when they talk about Beckham's bending free kicks. I mean, that was a signature of his in a lot of ways, and as a cultural touchstone, obviously with the movie and all of that. But that's the kind of thing we're talking about, that ability to bend the kick that way. And in the sense of your Courtois, it's almost unsavable, isn't it? Like, what do you do with that? Like, we can criticize his positioning, but I mean, I guess at some point you're the keeper, you got to be somewhere, and on some level you just kind of. We've had to say this a few times with some keeper performances, right? Sometimes you just tip your cap. I mean, you get beat in a way that's just a really impressive and a perfectly placed shot.
Well, right. It's the same thing that we were saying in the other direction when Bruno Fernandes scored that one a few weeks back, where it went up and then down under the crossbar, over the wall and under the crossbar. It was the same kind of thing. Like, your wall is there to do its job. You position it to block off that side of the goal, so the keeper only needs to worry about the other side. And when you have like a potentially like what we would have called after it was scored like a once in a lifetime shot very quickly to be disproven. But when we call that like, a shot that you just don't expect someone like that to make, that really is extraordinary in every sense of the word, it's, you give it to him, I guess.
Yeah, as the announcers said right afterwards, you may not see a better free kick this season.
Very short-lived, yeah.
Well, they said, in his defense, he said might.
Yep. And we were very glad for him to be disproven, and that it was Arsenal to disprove him.
I mean, I think it was Arsenal who said it. In some ways, they're like your children, that you love them both equally, but differently. This is it. I mean, I have to say, like, in some ways, Rice taking the shot, as we talked about the positioning, it's center. Maybe it's a little further back than you'd expect. Although I have to say, I think we mentioned this. I don't know if we talked about this, or I was talking about it while watching it in the previous weekend's game, the Premier League game, the Everton game. He had leathered one on a free kick. It was right at Pickford, so nothing really came of it. But he again, we talked about Martinelli's confidence coming into this, right? How well he had performed last week. And then this game, and Rice as well, getting some of those opportunities, starting to feel good about yourself so that when the moment comes, you're able to do it. But again, maybe a little far away from goal, but centrally located. You could sort of see where you say to yourself, yeah, I could take this shot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, this second one, like, just say to yourself, yeah, I can do that. And then he did it. I mean, we use phrases like top corner, right? Like, that's the sort of direction you're going at.
Yeah.
Look at the replay. If it's any more top corner, it's hitting the bar and bouncing out. Like, I don't. Yeah. Odegaard, you can see him when Rice hits it and starts the celebration. Odegaard's just like, Saliba is just like bouncing as he runs over. Oh my goodness.
It was funny seeing Kylian Mbappe's reaction too, where he's just like, man, like, and then there's another one where I forget which, it was after one of the goals. It was after the second or the third, I forget which, but they showed him in slow motion. He was just like going like doing something like that with his lips, and they showed it in slow motion, so you saw his lips like flapping in the weirdest way.
FIFA loves that shot in the World Cup. It must be the same people who do the UEFA. I mean, it's kind of funny the first time, but after a while, it's like, why are we doing this? This is weird. Like,
I've never seen that before.
FIFA loves that one in the World Cup. Like, you'll see that one all the time. It's funny the first couple of times, and after a while, it just does get a little weird, I think. But I mean, my goodness. And it's an interesting thing. Let me ask you this, because we'll talk about the third goal, Marino's finish, which was an excellent finish in its own right. To finish 3-0, on some ways, it does feel reflective of the game, right? Like, it does feel like we were the stronger team overall. And yet, I kind of want to ask you, and I'll relate my experience on this in just a moment. I kind of want to ask you, I mean, do you feel like 3-0 was reflective of the game we played across the 90 minutes?
It's tough to say. I mean, there were times where it felt like we could have gotten another couple in, and clearly 3-0 is nice, and you wouldn't ever complain about that against Real Madrid, especially. But it's like we did get 7-0 in the Champions League in the first leg not too long ago. We have it in us, and I wanted to see more. Obviously, every goal is another nail in the coffin, just to give us that much better footing when we go to the Bernabeu. But yeah, no, it felt right. It felt like, given who they are, and they are not a team. They did not bunker and counter against us. They were playing all out, and they had their chances that were some close calls that could have maybe gone the other way and didn't. I felt like overall, yeah, I think 3-0 feels about right to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, so I should point out, I was in a meeting for the first half, so I didn't see any of it live. And then the second half I had to go to an event where I set myself up and just had my kind of laptop open. And, I did the setup as quickly as I could. And I was able to watch the second half before we started, and watched it, in a room where other things are going on, but I'm just kind of focused on this thing. So it's the small screen, the sound is off, so I'm not I'm watching, and of course, Rice scores, and it's,
yeah, right.
But but it's silent. I can't I can get up and shout. And so then I went home, and that evening I watched it. I watched the full replay, which obviously is very different. Again, it's the different thing about watching when you know the score. Real had a few moments of danger there in the first half, and in a lot of ways, I think this played out. In a lot of ways, some of the pregame commentary I heard, which is that Madrid was generally going to be ceding possession. They are not going to be. They're not. Barcelona is more the team is going to dominate possession, right? Like a City, given their lineage makes sense, but to pass the ball around and try to control the flow of the game. Madrid is generally going to be not bunkering, but definitely willing to cede possession, but not give up too many opportunities. And then from there, push forward, because you look at their forward line, Rodrigo, Vinny, Mbappe. I mean, they had a couple of chances that, they didn't do particularly well with, but they had a few chances that were kind of close. And, on another day, we may be down 1-0 going into the half, although we generated a few opportunities as well. And I think we also need to sort of shout out Thibaut Courtois, who is outstanding in this game. He's really good. It's so annoying. He's a really good keeper, isn't he?
Yeah. He alone kept it down to 3-0. I shouldn't say alone. Some of their other defenders had some good blocks that stopped us a couple times also, but there was a couple that, yeah.
Camavinga was
5-0.
Camavinga was a wrecking ball throughout the game.
Yeah.
But, Courtois' performance is a big part of that. I think a win is a fair result. I'm not sure about the score, because I do feel like Madrid played a little, but it's interesting, of course, with so much of your opinion of the game reflects the result, and a lot of the commentary surrounding Madrid with post game was incredibly negative. There's a lot of Ancelotti out, which is both reasonable and silly at the same time. But they're in some ways reaping the fruits of the Galacticos strategy, like that when I mentioned that a few minutes ago, right? That Galacticos team didn't win anything. Like the whole point was to win the Champions League, because that's the competition more than anything else they care about, and they didn't do it at all during that era. It wasn't until fairly recently when they've kind of reinvested in some younger players and a not so much a more talented team, but a deeper team. And that's kind of what they're lacking right now. Some of that's injuries. But then again, you're not going to get any sympathy from Arsenal when it comes to key players being injured.
No.
But yeah, some of that's injuries, but a lot of it's just, we say, poor squad building. It's very top heavy. And if those top players, was Mbappe walking around a lot for parts of the game? Sure, but that's how he always plays. That's not really a criticism of Mbappe to say he played like Mbappe. The difference was he didn't score. He
Right.
had a few chances
when he
early on.
had those chances. Right, he didn't capitalize on them. Yeah.
Right, he doesn't convert those, and as a result, Real sets themselves up for that, for the free kick opportunity. Having said that, I thought we were dangerous much of the night. I thought we were very good in possession. Madrid's not going to bunker on us. That's not what they're going to do. And I thought we carved out a few opportunities, and we had a handful of times. Saka had one or two balls that rolled through the 6-yard box, and you're just waiting for somebody to just poke a toe on it.
Oh, that one passed two different players before it went out over the byline.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to sit here and say, sliding doors. This could have easily been 3-0 to Madrid. I don't think that's true. I do think we were the better team overall, but
yeah.
I don't want to say 3-0 flatters us. I mean, it was a great night. We took our chances and all of that, but it's so interesting to sort of think about. Yeah, I mean, that's what we talked about the Champions League, right? That set pieces were likely to be dangerous, although not in the way we anticipated. And at this stage, it's about moments of magic from your best players. And as the song went out, we got him half price. 105 million, we got him half price. Yeah, that was just spectacular.
Yeah. I mean, you got me thinking about Saka with that one pass that missed a couple players. He's definitely rusty. There are a few moments in this game and at Brentford today as we record that I definitely noticed some things. Yeah, he's not on top of his game yet. Yeah. I'm hoping he gets there soon. But yeah, there's the one in particular where he just out and out passed the ball to one of the Madrid players. And that was one of those dangerous chances where we were lucky to get away without them scoring, where he just passed to the wrong person or something like that, where it just, he thought he was going somewhere else and right into a Madrid player. There's no Arsenal player around.
Yeah. I mean, don't underestimate too, and I know you're not a video gamer on this, so not
FIFA, no.
Yeah, you're not going to think about it in these terms, but sometimes it gets very easy to sort of think about it as a video game, like a plug and play guy. He sort of goes in there, and I mean, it's the Champions League final, whatever. It's a safety thing, I mean, there is something to the stage of this and the spectacle, and they did the pregame fire show and the build up. I think they said the team announced that they didn't. So normally, if you go to a sporting event, right, when you walk through the concourse, and baseball in particular does this because of the way the game is played, but they'll have the game playing on TVs while you're in line for concessions or going to the bathroom. They didn't do it. They turned it off. They turned off the TVs in the concourse and basically said, no, you want to watch the game.
Encourage them to be there, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I think for everything I've heard, that's what the atmosphere lent itself to that anyway. But and there is something to it as well. I mean, the stadium was full, before kickoff, well before kick, which is not something that typically happens in game.
Right.
Outside of the biggest games, and this obviously is that in a lot of ways. But back to the point about the players, I mean, that affects you as a player. You get a little emotional, you get a little nervous. I watched also, just so this is slightly related, this past Monday was the national championship game for men's college basketball. You can watch the University of Houston play Florida. And I mean, the first 5 minutes were terrible basketball because you could tell they're terrified. These are 19 to 23-year-old old guys. I mean, this is the biggest moment of their lives, and it takes a while. And then both teams settled in. I mean, some of it they played good defense, but it took them a while to settle in and sort of do the things. And then the points started to come, and it's more of a regular basketball game. But that's. Yeah, I think there's just a little bit of that nervousness too, and we'll start to unless there's some we can talk a little more about this game, but I do think also looking ahead a little bit to the second leg, because we can't forget there's a second leg. That's something to keep in mind when they go to the Bernabeu for the second leg. Yeah.
So as you said, we're at halftime in this tie. What? If you were to advise the players, you're to take Arteta's pregame speech or whatever, tell them what they're going to be practicing at training the next few days or whatever, what strategy would you employ at the Bernabeu? What would you be telling them to do?
Well, I mean, first off, if I'm going to be Arteta, I need to fix the. Let me fix my hair. Oh wait, he's perfect. No. I mean, I think early on, and some of us were talking about this at the bar today. I think this is the second leg to me is a game that the first goal is going to matter a great deal, because if we get that goal, if it's 4, I don't want to say it's done and dusted, but man, that's a huge margin for Madrid to overcome. Having said that, they're the kind of team, and you saw this in that first leg, they are the kind of team that if they get that first goal, they can very easily grab another in 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, you're in that cauldron, all the momentum's on their side, and as good as our defense is, and even with Kivior, who I thought was very good on Tuesday, everyone was good on Tuesday, but Kivior was good, but all of a sudden that starts to pick up, and we've seen in the league the difficulties we have in holding on to the 1-goal lead, and we'll talk a little bit about Brentford. We'll talk a tiny bit about Brentford, but I mean that's the kind of thing that tie can turn quickly. So if they get that first goal, I think you have to be prepared for a big flurry early on. Not that we're going to sit and sit back. I don't think we're going to do that. Although, well, let me rephrase that. I think there's 2 ways we look at it. One is, as the saying goes, you dance with the girl that brung you, right? We got to this stage of the competition playing a certain way. We're going to keep playing that way, which is the best version of ourselves. And, that's what you see more in the first half. I think there's also a part where you sort of take the strategy we've seen us take against City over the last couple of years, where we're prepared to not bunker, but definitely sit back and absorb a little bit, which I think I wouldn't do it necessarily. I think the real strategy is to sort of play your own game for a little bit and sort of see how it goes. But I think there's going to be a point of the game which we sort of sit back, because that's the thing. Real doesn't want to dominate possession. They don't want to pass the ball around. They don't want to keep going pass. They don't want to do that. And so the fact that they're down 3 goals kind of puts them in a more difficult situation. I wonder if you by playing that way, by sitting back and trying to absorb their pressure, absorb them a little bit. I mean, I do think that first 15, 20 minutes, I think you have to be prepared for them to come at you. Again, we just came out of March Madness in college basketball, and the big story every year of the tournament, right, is the big upsets, right? The little schools upsetting the big powerful programs. One of the key part of any of those games is, they say, it's the first 5 minutes of the second half. Because usually it's okay, it's a tight game, the little guys hit some shots, they stay close, or maybe they're ahead at halftime, the big team is playing poorly, you get into halftime, you get your 15 minutes, the coach, rips you a new one, and then usually those teams come out in the second half, and the really good ones are like, no, wait a minute, we're better, and then just rip off a 10-point run and completely change the complexion of the game.
Right.
I do think there's an element of that early on you may see a big push from them. I mean, I think honestly, the beginning, as I'm talking myself through this, I think the beginning of the game and then the first 15, 20 minutes after halftime, I think are going to be the real critical moments. If we can weather whatever storm comes there, I think we're going to be in excellent shape. And I do think if we score a goal, and that's why I wouldn't necessarily sit back. I think I'm okay, certainly for the first half, trying to play our game. But I almost don't be surprised if it's a little bit like, I want to say it was the game at City, not this season, but I think or maybe it was earlier this season, some of the recent games at City, there's been a few moments where we've been knocked back. Like, I know we're ceding possession, but it's clearly not going as well as we would like. I don't be surprised if we get a few of those moments, but if we can weather those storms, I feel really good. Obviously, we'll feel really good. Again, 3 goals is big, but a 3-goal lead in the right environment can evaporate very quickly. So we have to be careful with that.
Yeah, I'd feel better going into those tense defensive situations with Big Gabby, but yeah, roll with the punches and hopefully Kivior is up to the task. Yeah.
It's just the way it is. I mean, one other thing we should watch for too, we want to make sure we talk about this, is yellow cards. Now, Real is going to be out without Camavinga, who's one of the key pieces. Now, I mean,
that was funny the way that happened.
It's a freaking wrecking ball. He shouldn't have been lasted as long as he did, but that's another conversation for another time. But he picked up his second yellow in the game, or his first yellow in the game. That was, by the way, that he was suspended for the second leg already. So
okay.
Now, having picked up the second one, more for dissent, I thought it was for kicking the ball. Yeah, away. That was it. The time wasting.
Yeah.
It was in. Yeah, that was a Dissent-ish moment. So that, which got himself, which was kind of the cherry on top of the sundae from everyone, from an Arsenal or an anti-Real perspective. In terms of the result of the game. But yeah, he is out, and that's something we have to keep an eye on, because remember, the yellow cards evaporate, or they're gone after the quarterfinals.
Right.
We, however, have 4 players on 3 yellows who a yellow in the game would have them suspended for the first leg of the semifinal. Again, we should be clear. We should be clear, and here's my a wooden desk in front of me, just so we're clear. Yeah. We don't want, that would be bad if they were suspended for that. So those 4 players, think about this list: Declan Rice, Jurrien Timber, Gabriel Martinelli, Thomas Partey. And Rice, Timber, and Martinelli were sitting on the yellows coming into the game. Partey picked up a yellow in the first leg. That is one that is going to sort of. That's one we got to. That's it. He's another one we'll keep an eye on. Again, I think all of those players. Honestly, the one that would make me the most nervous about a yellow card is Timber. But you just never know. All of a sudden they get caught in a bad situation. Having said that, if you're, gosh, I hate to put this in the universe, but if the price to pay to advance to the semifinals is one of them picks up a yellow and is out for the first leg of the semis, I think you pay it. I think if you sat me, honestly, if you sat me right here, one of those guys picks up a yellow, but we advance. I think I'd take it.
I guess it depends
I would
on what you're putting up against it.
I would take it.
Yeah, sure. If the alternative is not making it to the semifinal at all, but clearly we'd like to make it to the semifinal with all of them.
Of course, yeah. It's something to keep an eye on. And, you wonder how much it plays into their mindset at this point. Because I'm sure of course they know. But at the same time, like we think about it, again, I'm talking myself through scenarios. Like, imagine for a moment you're Timber and you've got Vinny Jr. coming down the wing, in a 1-goal game, he beats you and you haul him down without a second thought. And there's your, or even near the halfway line to prevent the attack. And there's your yellow card. In a 1-goal game, totally worth it.
Right.
In a 3-goal game,
right.
Is that enough to get your hands to your side? And maybe you get beat. Maybe it creates a good offensive opportunity. But, because you're up 3 goals, not that you can afford it, but it does give you a little bit more of a cushion there. Anyway, I want to be careful. I'm overwhelming myself with scenarios.
Well, no, that could also play into the starting lineup too. Maybe we don't see Timber start in favor of, another defender who has fewer yellow cards at this point or something,
Well, no, because our only other option at right back is going to be Ben White, who, we'll talk about Brentford, picked up a knock in training, and apparently, and I just saw Arteta, this was a post-game comment from Arteta, where was it? Mentioned about Ben White. Where is it? Yeah, we don't know if he'll be ready. He could not be in condition to be in the squad today and be selected, so we have a few days, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, how much of that is we really don't know, and how much of that is just being cagey? I can't say. Yeah. I think the problem is you look at that lineup, and I just say to myself, the only one I might bench is Martinelli for Trossard, but honestly, Martinelli's the first choice at that position.
Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about Trossard as a starter not too long ago, and it really does seem like he does better as a sub. And, you saw it in this match where he came on as a late sub and contributed to that 3rd goal, right? He had the first or second assist on that one. He does a lot better, I think, as a sub than as a starter. I think I've seen that multiple times recently and going back. So, hopefully we see Martinelli start. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Trossard is better suited to a super sub role or to start in games with heavy rotation like we saw this weekend. He can spot start. He'll be okay. But there were
Yeah.
points, that where he struggled with Brentford's big center backs. Because a part of the problem is he ends up sometimes playing centrally, which, depending on the defense he's facing, could be more difficult. He is a smaller player, and, his strength is not his game. He is not going to go up and play a big hulking center forward who holds the ball. I mean, Kai Havertz is a big guy and can do a lot of big guy things that Trossard, as opposed to, say, a Gabriel Jesus, who, while he wasn't very tall, was obviously, as we've seen, very strong and could do some of that hold-up play that we need from the striker. And so, again, we'd be having him play on the wing for Martinelli anyway. But I do think I just look at those four and I say they have to start. You can't. And you can't play the game about being nervous, at least in terms of the starting one with the yellows like that. Because if they don't start, you're probably going to need them to come on. They'd almost have to come off the bench anyway. At which point they're just as liable to pick up a yellow.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't. It's something I'd say something for more of us as fans to keep an eye on. Just be aware of that. But I mean, in a sense, they're going to play the game. There's nothing else you can do.
Right. So, how are things looking elsewhere in the bracket for the Champions League with an eye towards answering one specific question, which is, okay, so we accomplish our goal in Wednesday's reverse fixture and we win on aggregate and we move forward. Who will we likely play against between Aston Villa and PSG? And also for you, who between them would you rather play against? Who would you be rooting for in their reverse fixture?
So the first leg went 3-1 to Paris Saint-Germain. It sounds like they were the better team. They've been a very good team since the turn of the year. I think they have one loss in all competitions since the start of the new year, and it was to Liverpool, who they ultimately beat in the second leg and then won on penalties, or maybe where it was one of their legs in the last round and then they beat them on penalties. I think.
Well, they lost to us also.
Well, yeah, but that was back in the fall.
You're saying since the new year. Okay, gotcha.
Since the turn of the new year. But anyway, I think it's been about that long. Anyway, they beat Aston Villa 3-1. Now they will play the second leg in Villa Park in Birmingham, which will be, difficult, obviously. But we talk about the way we're feeling going into the Bernabeu. I think PSG is going to feel even more confident heading into Villa Park. As quality as that team is, I don't think they're built to overcome a 2-goal deficit quite like that. In the same way, maybe Real scoring 3 goals would not be the craziest thing in the world. Villa, winning 2-0 or more to advance is a little harder, especially against a team of their quality. So Paris Saint-Germain definitely is the favorite there. In terms of who I'd like to play, this is such a poison chalice of a question. Because there's no right answer here. I mean, really the problem is when you say one, there's invariably a level of disrespect associated with this. So I'll say this. I think this is the general choice of a lot of Arsenal fans. It has nothing to do with the quality of the team. It has nothing to do with who we match up with or who would I rather be. I would rather face Paris Saint-Germain because I would rather face a team that we don't see already in the Premier League. That's part of the fun of the That's part of the fun of the Champions League, right? Is to play teams that you won't normally see. We've already seen Villa twice this year. I mean, if it's Villa, it's Villa. I'm not this isn't a thing that we should be afraid of them or anything like that. I do think there's a different dynamic in that game going in, having played twice, and therefore we know each other a little better. But as you mentioned, we played PSG already. There is a sense of familiarity, which takes a little bit of the caginess out of some of the early stages of these kinds of games. But having said that, given the choice, who would I rather face in the Champions League? Paris is just more exotic. But if it's Villa, it's Villa. I don't think.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy either way. Obviously, in the end of the day, who would you like to play in the semifinals? I'll play 1970 Brazil. I don't care. I want to be in the semifinals of the Champions League. Really quickly, though, we should mention on the other side of the bracket, Barcelona 4-0 winners at home over Borussia Dortmund. They go to Dortmund, but that tie looks over. Barcelona is probably Barcelona is, I think, the best team remaining in the tournament. Certainly, they've been playing very well as of late, and they thumped Madrid twice this year, or Real twice this year. On the other side, the last one, Inter Milan snatched a late goal at the Allianz to win 2-1 against Bayern Munich. Inter Milan, by the way, I said Barcelona's probably the favorite. Don't sleep on Inter Milan. Internazionale. They beat us. Recall, they're the only team that's beaten us in the Champions League this year. They have conceded a grand total of 3 goals in the entirety of the Champions League. They are very good defensively.
One of them was from us.
One of the no, I believe it. No, we were. I think we were one. Was that one?
Was it?
No, I thought we were.
I thought we scored. No, I thought we were the first. I'm checking this now. I thought we were the first to score against them. We didn't end up winning, but I think we did score. Oh no, I guess not.
Yeah, that was only.
I'm remembering that wrong.
It was 1-0.
I am remembering that wrong.
It's a lot of games at this point. I mean, they're up 2-1. They're going home with the lead over a Bayern team we've talked about. It's not really Bayern vintage, even though they're probably going to win the Bundesliga. I mean, I think if you look at the teams right now that are certainly ahead of the game in terms of in terms of going to that both all have a foot in the semis at this point. I mean, everyone is up, up in a good position. PSG is up by 2 goals. Arsenal's up by 3 goals. Barcelona's up by 4. And Milan's only 1, but the only one going home. They have a road win. I mean, honestly, if you tell me about those 4 teams, if it was PSG, Arsenal, Barcelona, and Inter Milan, oh boy, that is a monster Final Four, the way these teams have played this season. So, and frankly, I think of those Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, I think are the most likely to bounce back potentially. Probably Bayern more than any of them, but Real obviously you can't discount that. I'm just going to ramble at this point. Yeah, wow. It's going to be a heck of a semifinal. So, it'll be very interesting to watch the second legs as this week, and it looks like what the schedule I'm looking at. PSG, Villa, and Barcelona and Dortmund are going to be on Tuesday, and then Arsenal, Real Madrid, and then Inter Milan, Bayern will be on Wednesday. So they're flipping the ties from the first leg. So the Tuesday teams will be on Wednesday.
Well, yeah, I'm excited, super excited to watch that later that same day. Watch the full match replay like I did the first time around. Well, the time has come to talk about Brentford. We'll probably end up keeping it fairly brief. I don't know how much there is ultimately to say. We played a fairly rotated side like we did against Everton before the first leg against Real. And, kind of got most of our A team subbed in at the expense of playing 10 men at the very end of the match. But yeah, so as a reminder for any new soccer fans that are watching the show, like why did we not see our main team starting in this match?
So a lot of this stems from the fact, and I see it's an oddity from our perspective as Americans who, as we talked about this, our competitions tend to be sequential, right? We have the regular season, then the playoffs, and they're two they flow into it. The regular season flows into it, who qualifies, seeding, all of that. In soccer in general, I was going to say Europe, but really South America does this too. So many of the competitions run concurrently. So they all happen at the same time. And so you're advancing through all of them at the same time, which is part of what makes it so difficult. I mean, look at it. Manchester City gets, is certainly far behind the league and has been knocked out of the Champions League, but they're also in the semifinals of the FA Cup. Liverpool is leading the way to win the Premier League. They pretty much already won it at this point. It's just a question of when they clinch it officially, which is probably could be by the end of the month. But for Liverpool, they'll win the league. But in a week they lost the Carabao Cup final, got knocked out of the FA Cup, and that was a few weeks before. But then also got knocked out of the Champions League. Like it can happen a lot. Arsenal, right? We just haven't been able to keep pace with Liverpool at the top of the Premier League. We got knocked out early in the FA Cup, but here we are, feeling really good about making the semifinals of the Champions League because all these happen at once. There has to be this sense of prioritization because you just can't play your best players every single minute of every single game. You can't do it. They can't do it. They couldn't do it back in the day when players ran less than they do today. Now they run far more. They cover more distance. They run faster, all of that. So you have to make choices. Now, it helps us a little bit. We saw this a few points earlier in the season, right? You had a Champions League game, key Champions League game mixed around like a game against games against Chelsea and City or Spurs and Aston Villa. And I was like, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
With all due respect to Everton and to Brentford, they know exactly how their season's going to end. They're not going to Europe. They're not getting relegated. They're just kind of there. And especially for Brentford, full respect for that. I mean, that's an incredible place for a club that hadn't, until recently hadn't been in the Premier League in like 50 years. For them to just be there in the Premier League is a fantastic position to be in. And they've done a great job building the club, and they can beat anybody in the league. Nice things. But yeah, we're not looking at the Brentford game and saying to ourselves, oh, man, we can't afford to drop points to these guys in a way we would be against like Forest or weird to say, or City or those kind of teams, right? Yeah. Because of where we are in the table. And so knowing that, and obviously sitting there with the giant Real Madrid game on either side of that, you sort of say, Brentford, Everton, You roll out the play. In the end, what matters is that you're ready to go for this other game that's, 2 days, that's going to be, 3-4 days from now, as opposed to the game you're playing right now, because let's be honest, we're going to finish in second. That's pretty much it. We're going to finish in second. And even if we don't finish, even if things go catastrophically wrong, we'll finish in third. And all things considered, England's performance in European competition has clinched, we've talked about this, the 5th spot for the Premier League and the Champions League next year. Yeah, England's got one. We are not finishing 6th. It's just the number of things that would have to happen, which including, by the way, performances of consistency from City and Newcastle and a couple other teams to bypass us. That kind of consistency they haven't achieved at all this season. To say nothing, forget us for a moment. For them to have that kind of consistency as well down the stretch, guys, we're finishing in the top 5. We're going to be in the Champions League next year, but we're not going to win the Premier League title. Let's just sort of accept that. And once you accept that, this game becomes just a lovely Saturday out. The sun was shining. It was shining here in Houston. It was shining there on the TV. Then afterwards, I flipped on the Yankees game in New York, and everybody's got the balaclavas on, and it's the weather looks terrible.
I escaped that mess.
Yeah. That's right. You're currently in Texas. Yeah, the sun was shining. Yeah. The sun was shining here. It was shining there. It was a beautiful day, and just kind of enjoy the game. And I know you're still relatively new, so you're not quite living and dying on everything. But I know your frustration is there at the draw, isn't it?
No, it is. And it's especially frustrating when we drew from a leading position, right? We scored first and we just couldn't hold on to it. And I think that's happened just about every draw that wasn't a scoreless draw. Every time goals were scored and we end up drawing, we haven't had to come back from behind. We always do seem to score first. We just can't hold on to it anymore.
Yeah. It is a fascinating thing. And again, I don't want to draw too many conclusions from this game, which again is played in an atmosphere. It's just so and I do remember this a little bit. Now, again, obviously this was 2006. I was just getting into the Premier League. The last time we saw Arsenal go to the champion, when they wound up in the Champions League final. There is a point of the season where the Premier League games just kind of you just almost want to fast forward with you want this game to be on a Wednesday afternoon where I'm in a meeting. If I catch some of it, okay. Whereas you want the Champions League game on the Saturday to all right, hey, let's get this going. That's just not how it works. It's fine, whatever. But
not until the final, I guess.
which is a Saturday.
Right.
I think it's the last day of May. We'll see what happens there. But at the same time, this has been a recurring pattern. It's weird to say for a team that is good as we are defensively, and we are very good defensively. We shouldn't lose that. We are very good defensively. But this is an issue. And I don't know. And again, I don't know that you can point to any one particular thing, because every game it looks like it's something different. I mean, in some ways, the goal was the goal from today was a pretty well worked play from Brentford. Yeah, it looks like we missed a few things a little bit, but honestly, they worked the ball around well, got in a good position, took a good shot, and got a goal. And hats off. You know, it's frustrating because of where it is overall, but it is kind of an interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things, and the real isn't really because we've lost 3 games. We really haven't lost that many games in the league. It's really the draws that are killing us. We have 12 draws this season, which is a lot. Mm-hmm. We should also point out, though, that 12 draws was the exact number of draws won or picked up by the Invincibles in that season. Which, of course, they also won 26 games and didn't lose any, which is how they won the title. But although,
honestly, that wouldn't have put them ahead of Liverpool this season. I don't think.
Points. They wouldn't have won. That point total wouldn't have won the league in some recent years.
Yeah, the NBC commentators for today's match, I forget if it was the halftime show or the post game coverage, but they were pointing out that Liverpool is really the only title contending team that didn't suffer major injuries. Basically. Yeah. They haven't lost any of their key players, and that clearly does affect things. It has to.
Oh, and it always does. I mean, every sport deals with that, and that's just kind of, and it's not and it doesn't discredit Liverpool at all to say, they got away without major injuries in a way that Arsenal and City, who, let's be honest, are really the 2 teams you would expect to really contend out of the league, in a way that they did. I mean, City lost Rodri earlier in the season. They've had some other injury issues. Obviously, you know about ours. But I mean, and they avoid that, and that's how it goes. I mean, the healthiest teams tend to be the ones that are successful, and we all know it, and it's frustrating when it happens to you in the sense that you're losing guys for injuries. But that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. Yeah, they've been very lucky on that regard, and they've turned a lot of potentially bad results against them. Losses into draws and draws into wins in a way that we didn't. So that's just, in some ways, it's just kind of how it goes. And credit to them for doing it, even if we may years later look back and sort of be like, was this Liverpool team, even though they won the title by what'll end up being a fairly comfortable margin, are they? One of the great sides in history. Who knows? I mean, maybe we will. Maybe we'll look back and think about, remember that Liverpool team? And they kind of won the, it'll all be like, they kind of won the league by Christmas, and no one thought anyone had a chance in the second half, right? How that narrative gets driven in people's minds. Well, but I did see they popped up quickly post game. I think Liverpool, their magic number must be 6 points for the title, because I think they said, if Liverpool wins, we're recording this on Saturday, if they win tomorrow and then win next weekend and we lose next weekend to Ipswich, they would clinch the title on next weekend. I don't think we're going to lose to Ipswich. But the fact
that would be really bad.
but the fact you're running those scenarios right now tells me especially given it is mid-April.
It's
over.
Yeah, basically. So before we leave the Brentford match, just a couple other quick things to talk about. So you mentioned to me before we recorded, you hit some traffic. You weren't able to watch the beginning part of this match. Did you see the challenge by Norgard on Martinelli that he earned a yellow card for?
I have heard a lot of the commentary or read a lot of the post-game discussion about it. And I did see a still image of Norgard very clearly, with his legs around either side of Martinelli's legs. But I did not see the tackle. And I want to be very careful about making judgment, because we've talked about this, how slow motion and still images can sometimes present a picture of what's happened that isn't exactly reflective of what it looked like at full speed, or necessarily, how it was perceived by anyone involved. So I want to be careful about passing judgment. Having said that, it does seem like Arsenal was not thrilled about that challenge. You watched it. What did you see?
Yeah, so I mean, Martinelli's comments after the game indicated that he concerned that his leg could have been broken with that tackle. It's one of those that looks worse every time you see it. And it was one of these things where in this match, we actually saw the best and the worst that VAR has to offer. Like on the one hand, we had Kieran Tierney's early goal that got called back due to a very blatant offside call. And it was actually funny. The commentators, when they showed the freeze frame at the moment that the forward pass was made, they said, oh, well, he's clearly onside. And I was like, wait a second, what? No, he was very clearly offside. And they corrected themselves a few seconds later. Like, oh, no, I'm sorry. They identified the wrong player as being Kieran Tierney, which, as someone, I guess, who watches Arsenal more closely than they do, I would never have made that mistake. Yeah. But regardless, the semi-automated offside made its debut, and within, 10, 20 seconds, we got the on-screen graphic that clearly showed what you could see with the naked eye, that, he was too far forward. Almost his whole body was ahead of the last defender, and they called it back, and that was great. That was what we've seen from semi-automated offside in other competitions. So finally, the Premier League has caught up to the state of the art there. But then with this foul, it seems like one of these cases where it probably should have been VAR issuing a red card and saying, no, this is not a yellow card. This is a red card. And this is what VAR is for. Like looking at the video, seeing the nature of a challenge and how close Martinelli was to a severe injury from that challenge, that should have been made. And I knew that they weren't going to do that because we never see them issue penalties that the on-field referee didn't issue, or issue red cards, or even generally say it's a non-penalty like we had a week or two ago with Miles Lewis-Skelly. It was last week in the Everton match, where like they don't seem to really ever overturn anything that the on-field ref does. It's just, aside from offside, they don't do that.
I'm going to push back against that a little bit, without sounding like an Arsenal conspiracy theorist. We have seen that several times where yellow cards have been turned into red. I'm thinking of some dog-so tackles from Lewis-Skelly recently, or Saliba's from back, was at Bournemouth back earlier in the first half of the season. We've had those instances where we see those cards get turned out, or I think it was a Saliba where he ends up bumping heads with the guy in the box.
Now, with those, though, and maybe my understanding was wrong, but the way that it appeared to me as those unfolded was the VAR said, I think Michael Oliver, Simon Hooper, whichever it was in those cases, you better take another look at that. And the on-field ref took a look at the monitor and changed his decision. Is that what you're hoping for in this case, or does the VAR have the authority to just flat out say, no, that is a red card?
I mean, it's part of the conversation, but the VARs, in the end, the referee has the decision, has the final decision. Now,
okay.
Yeah, so it is ultimately the referee's call. Now, a lot of it stems from that conversation that they have as far as what to do. Typically, a part of the conversation is the VAR is trying to suggest, in a sense, they're trying to offer to the referee, hey, maybe you want to look at this. But some of those conversations are there was something you need to see this, and he still has the discretion to keep his call. But we'll take for example the Lewis-Skelly or the penalty conceded last week. Ideally, what you want, and this is the Arsenal perspective, to be fair, is for the VAR to pull the referee back and say, look, no, listen, you got to see this. I don't see any contact in the box. I don't think this is a penalty.
Right.
Like a much more declarative thing than what they end up getting sometimes. And then for the referee to go over. Now, the referee can watch and say, no, the contact continues into the box. That's a foul in the box. I'm comfortable with my decision. And ultimately, that's how it ends. But the VAR cannot overturn the call and I'd say, no, you're wrong. That's a red.
Okay.
So it is ultimately the referee's decision. Now, a lot of it stems from interpretations of rules and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and now having said that, look at a lot of the examples I'm throwing out of there, or the red cards we're seeing, are these judgment calls about things like we talked about the delay of game yellows we picked up, or in this case the dog-so challenge was the denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity. And that's fine. Those are written into the rules, and that's I haven't really complained about those red cards that we've gotten. But it does seem kind of interesting that we see a lot of those conversations surrounding certain kinds of indiscretions, as opposed to what we can characterize as violent conduct. I mean, I haven't seen it. And I don't know that Norgard, and apparently the post-game conversation, both Norgard and Martinelli essentially said he's not a dirty player, but it doesn't, and from Martinelli's perspective, that doesn't make it a dirty play, or that doesn't mean it's not a dirty play. But, that's...
Which actually, in that vein, there was one moment in Real Madrid where Jude Bellingham and Miles Lewis-Skelly kind of went to ground intertwined with each other, right? Mm-hmm. And as Miles Lewis-Skelly was getting up, his foot kind of pushed off of Jude Bellingham's calf or somewhere in his lower leg, right? And Bellingham was really upset and appealing to the ref, did you see he stamped on my foot or leg, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was funny, I was thinking about that, and as they showed, that one looked better every time I saw the replay. It doesn't look like he pressed particularly hard. He was clearly just trying to get up.
Yeah.
And why would he? They're international teammates. He doesn't want to piss this guy off. They play together for England.
Well, I mean, you'd be surprised when the competitive juices get flowing in that instance, right? Yeah, I mean, look, they're on the opposite side here. They want to. They're fiercely competitive. They both want to win. Yeah, I mean, that's. But
but to do something intentionally stepping on his leg, that's why I don't. You think that's not beyond the pale?
I don't think that's. Let's put it this way. I mean, I think we have seen. I mean, again, just because they're teammates doesn't mean they like each other. I don't know. I mean, Bellingham and Miles Lewis-Skelly has all of one international call up to England. He played 2 games in one window. He's not an established England international the way Bellingham is. They exist for the moment, at least in different planes as far as their status in England. So it's not as if they're it would be weird if it was Lewis-Skelly and Wanyeri, guys you knew have been friends for a while, assume for a moment when they were playing on a different club. That would be a little weirder. I mean, they've obviously met each other, but in the midst of competition. I mean, but again, I'll say this, right? It does feel like there's an extent. Now, again, having seen that a yellow card was given, I guess what bothers me is how many times we see this, especially in the Premier League, right? Some of these pretty nasty challenges that wind up getting nothing. Or just a foul call, and you're like, what's it going to take to pull the card out of the pocket? And it ends up being a delay of game. And it's okay, it does feel like, and I know this, I've heard this in other circles too, it does feel like the crackdown comes on ticky-tacky, almost easy stuff, small, it are essentially small violations of the rules, whereas stuff that's detrimental to the players and to the game. I mean, violent conduct is kind of it takes a hands-off approach, and that shouldn't be how it goes.
That's an inversion,
yeah. That shouldn't. That's not. That could end very poorly. Let's just say that.
Yeah. And then one other kind of funny thing that I think this is the first time I've seen happen in the soccer I've been watching the past few years, which is we ended up down to 10 men without a red card being shown. So we'd made, we wanted our key players to get a run out. Odegaard, Saka, I forget who, but a few others came out in the second half. And so Arteta had made all 5 of our allowed substitutions. And then Jorginho got some knock. I didn't see the nature of his injury. I don't recall what caused it, but he got walked off the field with the assistance of a couple physios, which at some point in the future, I don't want to take the time now, but I want to talk to you about that term. But he was helped off the field, and we were down to 10 men just because we couldn't substitute someone else in. That was kind of funny.
Yeah, I'd seen Jorginho a few times. He was kind of doing this a lot, and
really?
Apparently post game, this was Arteta's quote. It looks like Jorginho was a rib issue. I don't exactly know, but the problem was his breathing, so he could not carry on.
Oh no!
I mean, he comes off, he goes right down in the locker room. I
saw that, yeah,
which is not a good sign.
No,
I don't know. We kind of darkly amusing in the sense that okay, we used all ourselves, but it's not like Jorginho's going to get hurt because Jorginho never gets there was a little bit. He is a very durable player and has been a very durable player, and so that's a tough. That one's a tough injury to take. I mean, I thought we played fine with 10 men. With 10 men.
Yeah, and it wasn't for a long stretch
Yeah,
of the match.
it was for
either.
10 minutes. Yeah.
It was after it was already drawn even, and we still generated a couple chances, and came close, but couldn't quite convert them. Yeah.
I mean, it's. I mean, really, the most important thing, as we talked about, the really most important thing is that Jorginho's okay as soon as possible. I mean, obviously, of course, we go for his health in general, as we do. We don't want anyone to get hurt, for Arsenal or non-Arsenal players. We don't like players. We do not root for injuries here. Obviously, hopefully, he's not a guy. Let's put it this way: if he comes on assuming he's healthy and he comes on against Real Madrid, I think that's a good sign, because I think it means we're kind of doing our best to take the air out of the game. It's a good sign in the sense that we're trying to control it. If we're in need of a goal, he ain't coming on. Or if he is, it's for an injury. But I feel like
he didn't play in the first leg.
He didn't play in the first leg. I don't think there's any plan for him to play. Ideally, he doesn't play in the second leg. But now maybe he can't, which is not great. But you hope it just kind of works. It's we hope it's nothing serious, and regardless of what happens for Wednesday's game, at least hopefully he's available, if only to help with squad rotation on the weekend against Ipswich, because that's going to be a tough game too. Regardless of what happens in the tie with Real, I mean, we're gonna be mentally and emotionally cooked on after Wednesday. Whatever happens, either there's the thrill of advancing to the semifinals, sheer relief because they won 3-0 and then we advanced on penalties, or just the devastation of blowing the lead and all of that. Again, we're going to feel all sorts of things on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that trip to Ipswich is going to be a real emotional. We are going to be really deflated. I mean, honestly, I think we're going to be okay. I'm not worried about us the rest of the season in general. Let's put it this way. I'd be worried if we were playing someone other than Ipswich, who is not very good and hasn't been officially relegated, but will be soon enough.
Right.
They're not good. I think we'll be okay, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've gone pretty long. Who was your player of the week, as if it's actually a serious question that we don't already know the answer to?
Well, I mean, look, I thought he played really well against Brentford also. Like, I'm not going to, I don't want to make this all about Madrid, but let's be honest. It's the only game that mattered. It's Declan Rice. Just say it. It's Declan Rice, player of the week. I did think he was good against Brentford as well. He's clearly feeling it overall. Yeah, player of the week.
Yeah, very clear. I would not argue for anyone over him. But I do like spreading the conversation around and at least talking about other players, and who I actually want to highlight. Again, don't construe this as me saying that he was better than Rice in any way across these two matches this week, because you can't make that argument. I wouldn't make that argument. But I've been just noticing Miles Lewis-Skelly over and over again. He's surprisingly perseverant. Like, when he's on the ball, like, he wins duels like just about every time. He muscles past guys, he dribbles around them. He's very capable. He's doing really, really well, and I like watching him when he's on the ball.
Yeah, he was immense, especially considering his age. I think Thomas Partey deserves a shout this week as well. I thought he was very good against. It was very good against Madrid. I thought he was very good today, especially as the deputizing right back, which I realize he's not really playing a lot of defense against Brentford. But, I thought he was good overall, and of course got the goal for his troubles as well. So, I think Lewis-Skelly certainly had a very good week overall, as did Partey in that regard. So fair play to mention them.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you. It feels like around the time of year that new kits start to leak more in earnest, as we're only a few weeks away from them probably being officially available for purchase. And I see a link that has materialized in our show notes. Is there something worth looking at for it?
There is. We have a leak of the 25-26 home kit. It sounds like you're about to click on it. Is that happening?
I'm about to. So I'd be like doing the live reactions.
All right,
I'm clicking the link now.
Let's do it.
So, that is actually very interesting. All red. Well, that is not something I expected. Red and white.
Red with white sleeves.
Right, red with white sleeves, but like no other accent colors. That is really interesting.
Including on the badge. They have the full badge,
right?
The cannon this year, but the full badge, but it is only red and white. So imagine the no blue, no gold as you see on this one.
Yeah, this is very similar to the gold kit from last season. As far as like overall structure, it's back to like the 3-line Arsenal logo or Adidas logo. I mean, which I think the main kit has this season, but the second and third kits didn't, I think.
It's, I don't know. You're wearing one, so you tell me what's got.
This one. Yeah. This is the one that I knew had the 3 leaves. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not. It's not as readily visible on the video as typical, but yeah, this one I know has the 3 leaves. I'm trying to remember the black away kit, which that has, and I feel like that one might have the modern Adidas logo, but I
believe so as well.
But it's kind of cool with this one. I'm seeing the pattern in the background of the red trunk of the shirt. It's the Arsenal A, which is that's interesting. I haven't seen that on any official kits before.
What they call it the Gothic A. It was the A you would see if you look at some of the older crests, sort of the pre-modernized version you have here. Some of the older versions, the way the A was done, and it's a sublimated pattern of it repeated across the shirt. Very, very 80s, early 90s kind of thing with that sublimated pattern. You see a lot of that, which isn't a surprise. That kind of matches the kind of matches the aesthetic we've gotten a lot from Adidas. The overall looks really nice. I like the plain red and white. I don't love the sublimated A, but it's certainly not bad. They are what they call them raglan sleeves. So the sleeves and the white extends up to the shoulders as well, which I've never been a huge fan of. I'm definitely more of a cut them off here kind of person. But overall, I think it looks pretty sharp. I have generally more positive feelings about this one than I do about the current ones. I think, and from the looks of it, there is no other white other than the sleeves. Otherwise, it is just the red body all the way around.
Right.
No detailing on the sides or anything like that.
Oh, and actually, as I scroll down on that link, it does show the two this year and this leak and the current year side by side. And it is the modern Adidas logo, but with the cannon. So what was also funny is I remember when a friend of the show, Mike, co-hosted with me sometime last season, I think it was. He was wearing it was a hat or a hoodie or something that had the Gothic A on it, and I did not yet associate that with Arsenal. That wasn't something I'd seen before, and I asked him if he had something Arsenal to wear when we were doing show prep. He's like, "No, this is." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." I haven't seen that before.
It's not my favorite logo associated with Arsenal, but I appreciate. I know where it comes from, and I respect it. So
I think it's one that, as an American, and obviously it's not the primary thing you would notice on this shirt. So this isn't in any way something I would say about this jersey. But when it comes to like other merch that you might buy from Arsenal, as an American, I feel like awareness of the Premier League is so low. Like, if it just says Arsenal, a lot of people won't know what you're talking about. But then when you go with just the A, it's like completely cryptic to anybody who isn't already a fan of a team in this country. Whereas there's probably more general awareness, at least around London, if not Greater England,
Yeah, probably. But again, so much of this is really designed. I mean, and Arsenal does this particularly well, but a lot of clubs do it too. The elements are designed for the fans of the team, right? That it's meant to tell their story in a way that it's meant to tell their story in a way that it doesn't matter that other people don't know what it is. Like, it's not for them, it's for us.
Mm-hmm. The shorts, they also showed the shorts. The shorts are also like all white with red accents, so it's kind of like the inverse Arsenal crest, where it's like red lines with a white background. What I don't really like the horns this season didn't really ever bother me. I didn't care one way or another. What they're showing so far with these shorts that's kind of weird is it's got these lines that abruptly cut off the 3 Adidas stripes along the seams on the sides. It makes it look like you're wearing like a coat with tails is what it kind of looks like you're wearing like a fancy you're a fancy waiter or butler or something, and your tails are hanging down over it. But that doesn't extend. That would make more sense if it was a white shirt with the red outline. It just looks like a non sequitur when you put the jersey over it. That's kind of weird. I'm not
possibly
crazy about that.
If possible. I guess that's one. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like when they actually wear it.
Right.
Because again, a lot of it probably stems from how, are they tucked or untucked, at the shirt, and how does that work?
Right. And Kieran Tierney's leaving the team, so they'll all be untucked.
I'll be untucked, yeah.
And yeah, you may not notice that at all when it's untucked. That is totally fair. But yeah, like that was one thing that was cool with the horns is the horns on the jersey seamlessly blended into the horns on the shorts. Untucked or tucked, I think either way it looked equally good with those, and maybe even better untucked.
So. Yeah, they were supposed to. That's one. The problem is if they don't line up like right away, then they really don't look very good.
Yeah. Every time I've ever noticed it, I've never noticed it not being lined up on any of our players. So yeah. But no, this is a possibility for me being interested. I think the only one since I've been following the team was the gold year. Was like I'm just generally like there was gold in the away kit the first season that I started watching, and I wasn't crazy about that. And then when they brought the gold into the home kit the next year, like I'm not crazy about the gold accents, but this one I would consider. This is nice. Like overall, I would probably consider this one.
Yeah,
I'll need a whole new wardrobe just to keep all my Arsenal jerseys. I'm starting to run out of closet space pretty quickly.
Yep.
So we already talked about it a lot, but what is coming up for next week?
Right. Again, just as a friendly reminder, clear your calendar. Wednesday afternoon, in the U.S. anyway, away to Real Madrid, second leg of the Champions League quarterfinals. We're up 3-0. It's technically halftime, so get ready. That will be on Paramount Plus. And then on the weekend, on Sunday, on Peacock, we will be away to Ipswich. Our trip to go see Ed Sheeran and his team. So looking forward to this week.
Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with a link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to make sure you're subscribed wherever you watch or listen to us so you don't miss anything. We record the show using Zencastr. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our social pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at DoveFrankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
Here we go.